Hello and welcome back. This is Sherri with Heart and Soulful. I'm in the studio today working on my altered book journal, and I will put a link down in the description to the playlist for this entire series in case you want to watch it from the beginning. So if you're brand new to my channel, welcome. In the last video was me doing these pages, which I had already done them, but I was sharing all the things that I did. And during that video, I had already made this mechanical pocket that I was inspired by Eva from Bohemian Crafting. And I did another one as a demo. And in that video, I had put music page in the back of this pocket. Well, then I decided I wanted to put a little poem on there, kind of a little saying thing. Like on this one, there is just a little heart in there. And so I was going to do that. Well, I had already glued in my music paper, and then I had just bought some rice paper that I had never worked with before. And I copied my words onto the rice paper with an inkjet printer, and the ink didn't set. So when I went to glue it in my book, it smeared. So I had to cut it out. So I've cut it out. I thought, okay, I already had glued this pocket in, but I could cut it away, and then I can cut another piece of music paper and slip it in there. But this time I will make sure it's how I want it before I glue it into this pocket. So that was mistake number one. There are more than one in this video. So I decided I was going to put it on this side of the page, and went ahead and decided what was going to go here, so that I could cut away and kind of collage around my envelope, my pocket. So I went ahead and I've done that. And I had mentioned, I think in the last video, that when I'm working with a book, there might be a word or a line or a title or something that I want to show. So I'll collage around it. So that's what I did. This one said The King's Pleasure. And so I just decided I wanted to leave that showing. And then when I collaged around it, I didn't really like it. It was just a little too unfinished looking, I guess I could say. So I took a little piece of tissue paper that I had already stamped. This is from this tiny text. I'll put links in the description for materials and tools and things that I use. But I had already printed out on tissue this Faraway Places and Daring Adventures. So I just cut away that little thing because I thought, what would be a king's pleasure? Well, maybe faraway places. So I put that in there, and then I'm going to be using other words and things for this. So I thought this kind of looked like water in a way, flowers floating on water kind of thing. And so I thought, well, that's perfect because dragonflies love to be around water, and I'll just do that. So then I looked for a little poem or phrase or something that I can do about dragonflies. And that's what I tried to put on the music paper. But like I said, when I went to glue it down, the ink bled everywhere. So I cut it out, and I thought, okay, I'm going to just do another piece of music paper, and I will do it on tissue paper because I know that works. So I did it on tissue paper, and I still had like a little smudge, but I went ahead and just stuck it down, and it says, may you touch dragonflies and stars, dance with fairies, and talk to the moon. So I thought, well, I kind of messed it up, and this was after multiple attempts. I had tried rice paper, then I tried tracing paper, just to try some different things. You know, I'm new, like I said, and so I want to see what works and what doesn't work. I've used tissue paper before, and I figured, well, I'm going to end up doing that because I know that works. Now, somebody may be able to tell me a laser printer may be better. I do need to get a new printer, but I wasn't planning on getting a laser printer. But I know that some people don't have any trouble with smearing when they print out on tissue paper or rice paper or anything. And I do. So if I'm missing something, let me know. Maybe I've tried drying it with my heat gun, and it still runs. So after multiple attempts, I decided to give up, and I'm just going to grunge this piece of paper. So I took some gesso and kind of faded out the background a little bit so that the words were highlighted more. And then I took my Stabilo Alt pencil and kind of just outlined a little bit. Each of these pieces, each of these lines were on one little torn piece of tissue paper. So I kind of just decided to highlight that a little bit. So I just kind of scratchy lines with my pencil, and then I used a water pen to kind of blur those a little bit and just smear them around. And then I took a little stencil, one of the stencils that I'd been using for background, that's just kind of a mesh kind of thing, and just mixed up some acrylic paint just to kind of border that, which that's ending up not showing too much anyway. And then I took some Distress Oxide in Cracked Pistachio because I kind of liked the color with all of this. And I decided to maybe just do some little drips. You can kind of see that little subtle color. Well, that leads to the next accident I had. I hadn't screwed on my entire lid onto, because I was just using the little, I shouldn't even do this. I just used this little, I'm afraid to do it on here because I dropped it twice today. I just used that little tip and then forgot to put the lid all the way back on and spilled it all over my table. So not only did it get all over my area, my workspace, it got a drop on the little top part of my little file folder kind of thing. I didn't want it there. And I had a puddle. So I took a bunch of book pages, and these are always handy to keep right by your workspace because I used them to mop up my spilled ink. Now I have a few colors of this oxide spray stuff, but I really haven't used it too much. And so I really haven't played around with the colors. And who knew? I sprayed it with water so that it could kind of oxidize as I was mopping up, and then I would spritz it with water to kind of clean up some more. And it gave me this, like, this is all just one color. And so it's kind of green, and then there's some blue and some yellow. I just like how all the colors separated as I mopped it up. So I ended up with a whole bunch of pieces of this, which was really good because I used them for more layers later on. And I'll have them to use, you know, in this journal or whatever. So I had that little bit of ink, and then I just wanted to grunge it up even more. So I used some, I think some Vintage Photo maybe ink, and maybe some walnut stain, I'm not really sure. Just a couple of drops, and then just got it wet again. So I've just kind of really grunged up my little piece of paper. So I like how it turned out. I've already mentioned a couple of mistakes, and one of them was that I got a drop of that Cracked Pistachio on my tab, which was actually a little bit longer. And I didn't like it, tried to clean it off, and all it did was make my cardstock wavy and wet and not flat anymore. So I thought, okay, I need to do a new tab on, I'm just gonna cover it. So I actually did trim it down a little bit. And then I had these, and this is another little thing I wanted to show you how I made that look like rusty metal. So that was kind of my second mistake, needing a new idea. So I'm going to show you real quick kind of how I did that, because I'm sure there's lots of ways to do it, but I kind of just had to use what I have. Not everybody has the same supplies, so I just suggest use whatever you have. So I had made a bunch of these out of recycled file folder, and they're just kind of like the little tab for a file folder, and I just have a bunch made up just for when I want to use them. So I thought I'm going to try experimenting and turn some into looking like they're rusty. So what I did to do that, I'm not going to actually do it here because they have to dry in between, and these aren't even completely dry, but it'll kind of show you the idea, and that they all turn out different. These were all kind of done the same way, but they all look a little different. So what I used to do that was my little tab, and then I'll actually do this first step so you can kind of see what that's like. If you've never used this, this is, it's from Ranger Tim Holtz Distress Grit Paste. And it's really kind of a light modeling paste, but it has, I don't know if you can see that, it has almost like a sandiness to it. Let me see if I can get that in the, if you can see, let's get into focus here. It just kind of has a grit, sandy grit to it. So I just took just really that much on a palette knife, and you don't really need a lot. I just want to give it that rusty texture. So you can put as much or as little as you want on there, but I don't think it really takes too much. So just like that is all I did. And then you have to let it dry. And they say not to use a heat gun on it. I'm not sure why, if it's toxic or something like that. So you have to let it dry naturally. So that's why I'm not going to like do this whole thing, because that has to dry. And then what I did, the next step was just to use whatever you have in dark colors, or rusty looking colors. I suppose you could use paint. I think I've used paint on things before, but I just grabbed what I had that looked like rusty stuff. So I had rusty hinge, which you would think would be rusty, but it's actually pretty light. So I did some of that. And you can do, on some of these, I think, I'm not sure which one now, maybe this one. I actually did this first. This one's pretty wet. It's actually tearing because I've done so much to it. You would actually do, I'm going to show you the color of it though. So if you haven't used this one, it's kind of this rusty color, but it's pretty light. So after you do a coat of that, this one's going to be rusty without the grit paste, is to use darker things too. So you can use, Vintage Photo's not really darker, but it has that kind of yellowy color. So you could use some of that on it just to get it grungy, you know. And you can layer them and not get them all over. But what'll happen is when you, this is the lighter part is where the grit paste is. So it's going to take the color different than the cardstock, which is the darker areas. If you could see that. So just kind of play around with different inks. Shoe polish if you don't have these things. I have some ground espresso here. And that's much darker, but you can imagine if this had the texture paste on it, it's going to get in all the cracks and things like that. So you can kind of see that starting to look rustier. So you just keep layering. I used Rusty Hinge, Ground Espresso, Vintage Photo, and then I had some ink that's walnut stain. I even did some of that kind of at the end just to get a little darker even. So imagine that had grit paste on it. Then the other thing that I did was used, let me get some of this cleaned off. Now when I do this too, I have this mess here. I just use keep using these same papers just to sop it up so I don't waste that ink. And then it just gives you kind of another little layer. And then I hang them on the little clothesline I have above my head here. Okay, so imagine this was dry and it's kind of taking on a rusty color. And then you can even add more orange to it if you need, just whatever colors you had. I also played around and used some of this transparent raw umber ink just to get it kind of soaked into the grit paste a little bit. And I used some walnut stain spray ink. And I just kind of kept layering it until I got it to where it was going to look really grungy. So I'm just suggesting you take whatever you have and just mix them up, and you're just going to get all kinds of really neat effects. So to me, these are dark and grungy, but they don't really look like rusty metal yet to me. So I took, this one is a little different, you can see. This has 2 coats, but I took my mica spray in antique bronze, which ends up it's really kind of an orangey color. So I thought, well, that'll really give it that little bit of shine and make it look like metal. So I sprayed 2 coats and let it dry in between of the mica spray. So if you want it less sparkly, and not so much metal looking, you could just do 1 coat. but I really like the effect of the grit paste because it's just kind of that whole oxidized, how metal will just kind of, it rusts, but it's like grows, you know, it has that kind of texture too. So I like how this turned out. So play around with whatever dark inks, orangey, rusty kind of colors you have, and the grit paste will help. This is already probably dry enough to play around with, just so you can kind of see what that looks like a little bit. So you just kind of layer on your colors till you get a color that you like, and then spritz it with the mica spray. And to me, that kind of really gives it that metallic look, that rusty metal look. So on back to my little card, you can see it really does look like rusty metal to me. And then I took these teeny tiny little Tim Holtz brads, and to put that on, because I had trimmed it down, so I had to round my corners again. I actually even pulled this out and trimmed this edge a little bit so that it would still stick up above my pocket. And then I wanted to use these brads, but I didn't want them to show through on the other side or get caught on anything. So I just glued down this front side first and then punched my little holes with the little tiny punch, and then put the little brad in. And then I had to fold both sides one direction because it was gonna stick out, and then just glued the whole thing down. And then for my little label up here, that's just a couple of my little torn scraps from my scrap box. And then It Is a Long Journey kind of goes with the King's Pleasure, Faraway Places. It Is a Long Journey kind of all goes together. And I did stitch with my same embroidery thread that I used on this stitching. I had a little piece left over, so I just used it just to do kind of 2 little stitch marks. And then my Stabilo all pencil is just to kind of border it, just to make that darkened around it. So I did that. And then these little these little dragonflies, when you buy these foamy things, they're all, you know, that white foam around the edge. And to me, that just looks a little too craft supply, you know, thing. So just to kind of darken them up, I used a little, I think this is Stabilo. Yeah, Stabilo pen. But I just went around all the edges just lightly so that I wouldn't have a lot of white showing. And that just, I think, looks darker and grungier. So I've done that. Now I can, I want to put something here, and I kind of have that prepared. So maybe I will go ahead and put this in first. And I think I'm going to make like another pocket too when I glue this all down. So this is back to where I was, but I need to glue it in so nothing gets hung up. So let's see how tricky that might be to get in there with some glue. And I think I'll pull this up so that I don't accidentally get any glue on it. So I'm just gonna attempt to do this without messing anything up here. So now I have my pocket with my little saying inside, and then you still have this area to write on. But then because this is a journal and I want more places to write, I think when I put it in the book, I'm going to leave this open so that I can stick some paper or another little card or something as a side pocket too. That way I'll have another little pocket. So here I want to put something, and my little saying here, I was going to show you where to go. I got that from this little clipping sticker book, and it's really neat. It has lots of little, just like clippings out of books and things. So, you know, sometimes it's a saying, but sometimes it's just part of a sentence. But I like looking through those because it kind of gives me a story to go along with whatever I'm doing, and then it kind of goes from there. So the other one that I use that I'm going to put here is this from this metallic sticker. Put a link down below for that too. But for that one, I wanted to layer it up. So I grabbed a piece of silk scrap that I had that's kind of in that rusty color. I kind of, when I do these, I like to just have my book there because I want to coordinate. I don't, you know, too matchy-matchy coordinate. I don't know. I try to get away from that, but I like everything to look good together. So I put this here just to kind of repeat the rusty look. And then because these dragonflies have this sparkle to their wings, I thought I needed some kind of little sparkle. So I thought I can put that on top. And then this was really shiny and too pretty. And I wanted it to look a little grungy. So I just took my little sanding block and sanded the edges and a little on top of the black just to bring some of the white spots back. And then I took my vintage photo and went over that just to kind of make it not so shiny black and gold. I don't mind a little bit because of the dragonflies, but I don't want it to be too much. So I thought I'll layer that on top of that. And I think I'll go ahead and glue these together. And I liked this phrase too because it's all kind of about journey and travel and that sort of thing. So never stop exploring. And then I couldn't decide as I was playing around with this if it was still too bold, black and bold, you know, if maybe I wanted to dull it down a little bit. So I think I might want to use this little piece of organza ribbon, and that kind of fades it down a little bit. And I almost kind of like that because I really just want, you know, I don't want it to be a focal point. So maybe I'll do that. It's just kind of peeking through there. I don't really want, because it's organza ribbon, anywhere I put glue is going to show. So I think I'm going to go stitch it on with my sewing machine, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back with my little phrase, never stop exploring. And I like that because it's more subtle now. So I can go ahead and put that on. Yeah. Okay, and then I can glue it into my book. And I think I'm going to glue, like I said, just glue and leave this open so that I have another place for another pocket. So I'm going to just glue. Okay, I think we're working. I think I got it in there. I think it's straight. Hopefully it's straight. So once that dries, I'll feel more comfortable on that end. I may need to put a little bit more glue. I'll be able to, you know, put a little something in there once that's good and dry. So that's my share for today, my mistakes and my fixes. And I think I'm good with this page now. And next to work on this other side with some cards and a card for there. So I hope you enjoyed this little video with my mistakes. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. And any pointers you might have for me in the comments, please. Have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.